We're now going to turn our attention to some of the key combining operators in the Flux class from Project Reactor. These operators create a flux from multiple iterations or from multiple sources, and we'll be looking at the repeat and mergeWith operators. Let's start with the repeat operator. This operator returns a flux that repeats the sequence of items emitted by the given flux, num_repeat number of times, where num_repeat is a parameter that's passed in. This results actually in num_repeat plus 1 total subscriptions to the original source. So as a consequence, using the value 0 plays the original sequence once, which is a little bit non-intuitive. Repeat returns the new flux instance. This particular method doesn't operate on a given scheduler. It'll run in whatever context it's called in. This particular example is going to generate a random big fraction, and then it will repeat generating a random big fraction 4 times. So this will go ahead and generate 4 random big fractions. And you'll notice, by the way, that we're using the from method, which is the lazy method, which means that each time it's actually called, it's going to go ahead and return a different random big fraction. So we'll get back 4 random reduced big fractions. And we'll talk about this example a little later when we get into the case study. There's a similar method that's defined in RxJava's observable, also called repeat, and it works exactly the same way. So here's the same concept, here's the same code, here's the same example. It's just that we're replacing the flux from call with the nested call to from callable on a mono with the observables from callable call. And once again, just keep in mind that observable has a from callable factory method, but Flux does not. So we have to do this sort of idiom instead to get the same effect. Now let's turn our attention to another combining operator. This one's called mergeWith. And what this does is it merges the data from this flux and another publisher into an interleaved merged sequence. And the parameter that's passed is the publisher that we want to be merging with, and it returns the new merged Flux instance. This particular method can be used to combine items emitted by multiple Flux sources so they appear as if it's a single flux. So as you can see down below, we might have 2 fluxes of big fractions, F1 and F2, and then we would go ahead and say F1.mergeWith F2. And as you can see here, when you take a look at the top elements that are shown in the marble diagram, it's basically taking the output from F1 and the output from F2 and then merging them all together. This merge may interleave the items. So you have to be aware of the fact that of the semantics of what merge does. If you don't want to have interleaving, if you want to have things done with everything from the first flux appearing first, followed by everything from the second flux, in other words, they're not interleaving, then you can use Concat with. So again, if you take a look at this, you can see how mergeWith can be interleaving the elements. So F1's element first, then F2, then F1, then F2, and so on. Contrastly, or in contrast, conversely, if you use the Concat with method, that avoids the interleaving. All the elements from the first flux will go first, followed by a concatenation of all the elements from the second flux. Again, RxJava has a mergeWith operation that works exactly the same as the one in Project Reactor's Flux class. These methods are both very similar to the Java streams concat method. So here's an example of concat, which you can read more about at the link at the bottom of the slide. And what it's doing is it's basically taking a list of strings and a value n, and it's going ahead and essentially concatenating the list of strings n times. It's actually kind of an interesting little algorithm. We first create ourselves an empty stream of strings, and then we go ahead and count down in a while loop. And each time we loop through the loop, we're going to go ahead and concatenate the stream that was passed in as the parameter to the end of the stream that we're working with. And then we reassign that to the stream S again. And when we're all done, we go ahead and collect this concatenated stream into a list. So this is basically concatenating the list parameter n times. So it's worth knowing how this works and trying it out for fun. So that's the end of our first discussion about combining operators that are defined in the Flux class in Project Reactor.